Sergeant Arthur Logan Gilbert, United States Army, World War II. Art's one of the first D-Day World War II veterans I interviewed in my hometown here in Grand Junction, Colorado. It was 20 years, 6 months, and 1 day ago, and it was February 12th, 2004. He's featured in my second film, Omaha Beach D-Day, and just a wonderful man. I remember Art, he was on the honor flight here locally. I went on 2 of the World War II honor flights. 2010 was when I went. I saw Art in one of those flights, but I met his daughter Ruth Whipple recently at a Christian women's luncheon here where I spoke last month. I want to say hi to Ruth. Here's your dad's story. I'm so excited to share the entire story that I did with you, with him, and also with your mom, Frances Gilbert. So she talks at the end, and one of the rare times I interviewed the wife of a veteran, and you have to stick around and hear what she has to say too. But Art went into the military in 1942 as a young man, became a sergeant during World War II. He was with the 430th AAA Gun Battalion over in Europe and was one of the second waves to land on Omaha Beach on D-Day, folks. That's amazing. Second wave on Omaha Beach. I have those who landed in the first wave, but Art was in the second wave. That's part of the 1st Army, by the way, and they were attached to the 29th Infantry Division on D-Day, June 6, 1944, infamous 29th Division from Maryland. So he was right there in the thick of it. I have some great pictures after this introduction of him in World War II, and I just love the pictures. We lost Art at 91 in 2013. I go and visit his grave often here in Grand Junction where I live, and it's a memorable time for me to visit the graves of my veterans. I have about 24 of them locally here that I've interviewed, and Art is one of them. So I'm just happy to share his story with you. Art also liberated Auschwitz and the Buchenwald concentration camps, and I didn't have the opportunity or the foreknowledge to ask him back then because I wasn't thinking concentration camps at the time. That came a little later in my work. But what just an amazing story. I'm sure he would have told about that, the liberation of those camps. I have a full film on that, on the Holocaust and the GIs liberating the camps, if you want to watch that. It's called Yom HaShoah, The Holocaust Remembered. It's a powerful, powerful film. I want to thank Joe Sauls. I've worked with Joe before. Joe wanted to honor his uncles who fought in World War II, his Uncle Earl and his Uncle Don. So he's sponsoring this video and this story of Art's in memory of his uncles. Uncle Earl was a paratrooper in World War II, killed near St. Lo, France in 1944. His Uncle Don went into the military in World War II at the age of 16. Also fought in Korea where he earned a Bronze Star. So God bless your family, Joel, and the military history there. And I just am so glad to work with you again and just honor you and your family right now with this video today with Art. So God bless you. Thank you for supporting our veterans in this project and honoring him. So, okay, folks, if you like to sponsor a story or donate to this work, there's always information in the video description in the comment section of this video. If you like to do like Joel, have a loved one in your family that has served in the military, just let me know. You can sponsor their memory and sponsor one of my veterans in doing so. So I encourage you to do that. All that information is on my YouTube channel and on my website, larrycapetto.com. So you know how to get a hold of me, okay? Folks, let's honor Art Gilbert right now. This is such a treat for me to share his story. And one of my first veterans, and I just salute Art and his family. And Ruth, it was great meeting you, and I hope you enjoy this, and I'd just like to share this with your whole family now. God bless you. around D-Day, okay, Omaha Beach.
Okay.
And I took some notes the last time we talked, and I think you were with a separate detached battalion.
Correct.
430th?
Yeah, right.
And that was the 32nd Regiment?
That's 32nd Regiment engineers that we worked with.
Okay, okay. But basically, you know, I know 60 years is a long time to remember, but I just want you to kind of go back for me. And I asked all the men pretty much, you know, some of the same questions, but if you can just tell me what you remember about maybe the night before D-Day, maybe when you realized that, you know, you guys have been training and that now we're really going in, this is the real thing. Anything you want to add as far as, you know, your feelings, your mood, the mood of the men, something like that. But just tell me a little bit about the night before D-Day and what you remember before you went in the next day.
Oh, we disembarked from Southampton, England, and that afternoon, the day before, we spent loading and just kind of milling around at Southampton. Then we boarded up at night, and then they started out. It was a kind of a windy night, as I remember it. And of course, when we got aboard to go across the channel, the darn thing was fairly rough. Many of the guys were like me. It didn't take much to make you become seasick. The floor or the deck of the vessel we were on was so darn slick with puke that you couldn't hardly stand up. And it was a miserable night. And we were among the second wave that went in, thank goodness. There weren't too many of the first wave that survived. And our gun, we had a 40 millimeter, was one of the largest guns first ashore. And we went to work on that pillbox that's on top of the hill on Omaha Beach. There's a little road that kind of goes around the side of it on what was to us the left side of that little road. And it was giving everybody fits. We did manage to get around in that porthole on the thing, and that stopped monkey business from inside of it. So then we could proceed on up the hill. There were lots of barbed wire across it, mines and that thing, but anyway, helped the engineers clear that because we were attached to the group of the 29th Infantry and were to run anti-mech defense for them. So it was a kind of a confusing situation for a while.
Tell me about what you remember about, okay, you mentioned, you know, a little bit about the night before, but I mean, what was the mood of the troops? I mean, did you know what you're getting into that day? I mean, and then you mentioned the first wave being knocked out. Tell me about your trip into shore. Did you debark into a smaller landing craft and went down a cargo net, or how did you go to shore that morning?
Oh, we didn't go any cargo nets. We just on an LST type vehicle where you drop the front end of the thing down and you just roll out.
What do you remember about that? I mean,
oh, the water's not deep, boys. We got you in pretty close. Well, it was about belly button deep when we went in. We had waterproofed our equipment and everything to compensate for this, fortunately. And so we just kind of rolled in and rolled ashore.
What was going on? Were there artillery rounds, machine gun fire? What do you remember?
There was machine gun fire and artillery coming out of this pillbox at the top of the hill. They had an 88 in there, and the 88 was the choice of the German army, which was a darn good gun, mighty fine. And But where we went in, the pillbox couldn't get down far enough to get us, but the machine gun fire was wicked, very wicked. And we were just fortunate that we survived that.
You were a young man. How can they train you for what you saw and experienced there? I mean, was it worse than you thought it would be?
It was worse than we had thought it would be. Fortunately, the cadre that we had for our training, most of the men were ex-combatants, and many of them were West Point graduates that had been in action in Africa and other places of that nature. And the majority of them, instead of taking a discharge and going home, they had stayed to act as a training cadre. Most of them had maybe one arm gone, one leg gone, other injuries that they had sustained, so they had all been in action previously. They were pretty rough on us, and fortunately, I think that helped us survive. So they were a great bunch, even though at times you thought they were a real pain in the neck.
I want to go back just a minute now. When did you realize this was the time to go? I mean, did they make an announcement? This is the real thing, boys. We're going in. I mean, did anybody brief you like that, or did you was this part? You thought maybe this was just another training run or something? I mean.
Well, we had done several training runs previously, but we knew that this was it because our officers had told us that this is it, and we're really going to go this time. And you just knew that by, what do you call it, feeling, extrasensory perception or something. You knew that. Previously, we had made some runs down to Southampton several days before, different things you'd go in, and they had us disconnect the mufflers on our vehicles. Yeah. And you were supposed to yell and sing and just make a lot of racket. And then about dawn, why you all go back to where you were camped out before.
Did they wake you early that morning? Did you have a last meal? I mean, what was, again, on the ship going over?
Oh, we didn't do much eating that night. Our outfit didn't. We'd had a good lunch. We had a good lunch at noon. And that evening, nobody was really hungry. You just had a sense. We had been issued rations for about 3 days to carry with us. You had some extra cans of C rations and some K rations you put in your pocket. These big old fatigue pants that you had with the big pockets on the legs, and we had them stuffed. Uncomfortable, but then who knew? If you didn't have it with you, you didn't get it.
What was the mood of the other troops? I mean, did you have a prayer service? I mean, was there a chaplain aboard? What kind of preparations did you make? Anything like that?
Oh, we had a chaplain with us. He was a good man. He made it all around, kind of talked to us all in that particular craft a little bit. But nothing special. I think everybody was with his own thoughts. And guys that had been that didn't have too much to do with any religion of any kind or thought much, they were pretty quiet, and they thought about it a lot. So,
well, when it got to be dawn and you approached shore, I mean, was there a lot of anxiety? Do you remember seeing boats being hit in the water going in or anything like that? And
yeah, you
tell
did.
me what you were seeing.
The sky looked like a 4th of July celebration. There were all kinds of tracers and things because our 50 caliber machine guns that we had were loaded with tracer elements, and lots of that in the sky, and that was coming from both sides. So if you weren't scared, why, you were lying to anybody, because you all were. And that makes you pretty quiet.
Tell me okay, when you got to shore, you went on the beach, right?
Yes.
Okay, tell me about that experience, what you remember. Were you being shot at personally? Were anybody being hit around you? What were you seeing and what was going on?
Oh, there were some guys that got hit that weren't very far away from you, and you just reacted instinctively because of our training that we had had, and you didn't stop and think, good gosh, no, you got busy and tried to eliminate the problems that were coming up ahead of you, and you had to keep going. Stuff was coming in behind you, and you had to keep going, and you just had this urge to do and go.
Did you see the first wave, the casualties of the first wave? I mean, what were you?
Oh, they were all around. My goodness, they were people all around. Everything that you could imagine was there. There were pieces of them, and there were whole guys and all of that, but there were lots of them laying. You just had to get rid of that. I mean, ignore that and do your thing and go.
Was there a point where fear might have come over you, or you just thought, what am I doing here? Or were you just real focused on your mission, what you had to do?
We were focused on our mission. We had fear, yes. We were all frightened. You were scared, and badly scared. But at the same time, you react instinctively on what you had been trained to do, and you just did it.
How can they prepare you for something like that? Did you know how bad the first wave had been? Did you know how bad it was before you went in as a second wave, or did anybody tell you, like, it's pretty bad up there?
Nobody tells you. You don't have time to have somebody come back and say, hey, boy, this is that. You just could see. You could see. And that registered in your mind, and you still see that. So...
Could you actually see the first wave landing and then them getting shot up from the water when you're still out in the ocean?
Oh, no, you couldn't hardly see that. But there was just, like it was a matter of, just a kind of a mass confusion, you might say. So you didn't see that. We weren't close enough to see that. We could hear a lot of that, but you didn't see until you got right there. And then you were, so darn busy that you didn't stand and you didn't look way over there. Man, you concentrated on the area that you were right there to do.
Now, what kind of craft did you get off on? How many people were on your craft? How many men? The landing craft when you landed on the beach. Was it a small ship or a big one?
It was a small one that we got off of on the landing craft. I would say that it was probably maybe 75.
What do you remember about the actual landing? Was there a Navy crew on board that said, this is it, we're opening the door, you guys get off? What do you remember about that?
You had a Navy crew on the back there. I think there were 5 in that Navy crew. And of course the guy that had charge of that thing dropped the front end and said, this is it, boys, this is as far as we go. Out you go. So out we went. And he says, water not deep, we got you close. Well, as I say, it was about belly button deep.
Were you able to see all were the gunwales? I mean, was it too high and you couldn't see what was going on?
Oh, you could see over the top of that, yeah.
Were you seeing other boats coming in at the same time?
Oh, there were thousands of them. It seemed to be, you looked out back around over there and it just seemed like they were all over the place, and they were. And there were quite a few planes flying. There were some of ours, and there were some German planes. They would come down and strafed a little bit, and that was mostly the Focke-Wulf 90. And so there wasn't too much we could do with that, except I had a quad 50 mount there, and we used that. I don't know as we got anything with it, but anyway, we tried.
Tell me about your job again. What was your specific job that morning, and tell me about that.
I was chief of section on a 40 millimeter. We were basically an anti-aircraft outfit, and I say we had been assigned to the combat engineers to run anti-mech defense for them. And we were a separate battalion unattached. That meant that they could send us anywhere we wanted to go or wherever we were needed. And we went as a separate gun section, and sometimes we went as a whole battery. And other times we went as a battalion. A battalion normally is 1,000 men. I had 32 in my section. I had one 40 millimeter and a half track and several 50 caliber machine guns, and so but I was a buck sergeant in charge of that, what we called section. And some of the other sections that they had only had 7 or 8 men, and I had 32 in mine.
So were you giving orders on the beach? Were you setting up your stuff? I mean,
well, we didn't take time to set up. We had to be on the move, and we were a mobile unit, so we didn't set up at all. We just did our things on the move when we first went in, and we did that a great deal all the way through. And so wherever you thought you could do some good, you did it.
Did you realize how big, or did you realize the importance of D-Day at that time, or had that dawned on you yet? I mean, that you were involved with one of the largest landings ever. I mean,
well, we knew that they were going to have 3 places there. We had Utah Beach and Omaha Beach, and the British went in. I don't remember what they called theirs. British was off to the left, Utah was to the right of us, and we were in the center, you might say. And so we had been told that we were, and we knew fairly well what we were trying to get to. I think the first little village that we came to after the top of the hill was, I believe it was St. Marie Église. And that was the first place that we hit. We proceeded on in until we got to St. Lo. St. Lo was a problem. And it took us a little while to get around that.
how, I mean, talking to you, was there a lot of resistance though when you landed, or were you on the beach for a while, or did you just go right inland from there? I mean, were you pinned down at all, or what?
Oh, we were pinned down until we eliminated that pillbox on the top of the hill there, and then after that, why, there was resistance, yes, but there wasn't too many guys up there. I don't remember how large a unit they had, but there was quite a bit of resistance after we got up on top. But and of course they had, seems like they had a lot of their units off someplace else on a maneuver type thing, and had not expected us to come in there because, well, the weather wasn't the greatest, and I'm sure they had thought we wouldn't be there.
So you surprised them, probably.
To some extent, yes. I know, reading and hearing about them later on, that they tried to tell their superiors that what was out there, and they told them that they didn't think so. You guys have been drinking. But at the same time, they made a very good accounting for what they had up there. Thank goodness they didn't have any more than they did.
Do you remember seeing people that were hurt or wounded, and you wanted to help them, but you couldn't stop because you had to keep going? I mean, did you see a lot of that, or?
We saw some of that, yes, but then the people or the civilians that were still around or were there were tickled to death to see us. And the German servicemen, you didn't see too many wounded ones because most of them were beyond that. They'd been eliminated. And you have a natural instinct to help somebody, but then you had medics for that, and we had other things to do, so we did and left them.
Were there anybody in your team or your squad or whatever, the 32 people that you were over, any of them get shot or wounded or killed or?
Oh, we had some, yes. But I think we lost 2 or 3 there. But fortunately, we seem to be charmed, I guess.
Well, you know, looking back now, 60 years, you know, and the freedoms that we have in our country today and the flag and all that, what does freedom mean to you, you know, based on what you went through or just in general? What does freedom mean to Art Gilbert?
Our freedom is very dear to us. We have the ability to go wherever you want to go. You have the privilege of being able to do what you want to do, to work at what you desire to do. You may not always find the job that you particularly want, but you're free to find any job that you can do and that you want to do. You're free to raise a family. You have the freedom to own a house, a home. You have the freedom to own an automobile. You have the privilege of going to school. We have so many freedoms, and we don't appreciate the ones that we do have. And seeing the oppression that people have had, I can't tell you about the Iraq and these places that they are, but am aware of the oppression that they had 50, 60, 40 years ago. I have had the privilege of going over some parts of the world since then, and goodness, people haven't anywhere near the privileges and the freedoms that we do here.
What back in World War II, were you drafted or did you enlist?
I was drafted. I was going to enlist, but at the time that that came along, I was working on projects in California. I helped build Camp San Luis Obispo and Camp Roberts and Camp Cookie at Santa Maria. And I was working on the Santa Margarita Dam just outside of San Luis Obispo for a water supply. That was a very large dam and made quite a lake behind it, similar to what Blue Mesa is. It's a big reservoir, big lake. And I was working on that, and I had the position of being the concrete inspector for that particular project.
How did you perceive Hitler? I mean, when you went into the service, I mean, what was your view of the world situation then? I mean, obviously you knew about Hitler, what he was trying to do. How did you see that? What was your thoughts on that?
In high school, we had a very good history teacher. And they had brought up the current events of what was going on in the world, and Chamberlain and Hitler, Stalin, these places, and what they had been doing in 38 and 39 to parts of Europe, how they just went in and took over. And that's one reason I had gone to California to work for this engineering company, that I knew they were trying to build up their reserves and these kind of things, and I took advantage of that opportunity. I did feel that sooner or later we were going to have to, somebody was going to have to do something about what was going on in Europe.
So you pretty much, I mean, you look at today's situations in the world, and you saw Hitler as a threat, as an evil force that needed to be stopped, basically. Is that right? Or?
Yes. However, we can't police the whole world.
Now,
We're trying to.
What are your thoughts looking back on D-Day? What does D-Day mean to you now, 60 years later?
I look at it as I was privileged to participate in that and to help overcome the oppressions in that part of the world. I don't know how else we could have done it, and we waited too long to do it.
So you see D-Day as being a very significant part of our history. It was needful that we went into Europe the way we did. If we hadn't, it might have been worse than it was. But you do look at it as something that we needed to do, right?
It's something that we really needed to do.
Do you by chance know why they named the beach Omaha Beach? Do you know where that name came from? Did you ever hear anything like that? Because I haven't. Why did they call it Omaha and Utah Beach?
Oh, they had to have everything designated, and I don't know why they specifically picked those particular names.
I couldn't find that either.
I don't know.
In fact, Omaha Beach was divided up into sectors, or like 6 sectors.
Yes.
Fox and Dog and, whatever the code names that were there. But I always wondered what the reasoning was behind that. But let me ask you another question now. I'm talking in schools some to kids about World War II and Omaha Beach and D-Day. If you could talk to kids today, what would you tell them regarding freedom and what you did in World War II, and maybe some advice on how to live their lives based on the freedoms that we have today, because we take a lot of them for granted. So what would your message be to the younger generation, to the kids as a veteran today?
I would encourage them to study history. I don't seem to be teaching or studying history much. And history is very, very important to the whole world. It's as important to the world as memory is to man. Without memory, you can't do anything at all. And if you don't study history, you lose the thoughts of any of the freedoms that you are experiencing. Don't quite know how to explain that. But I think our young people have so many, many things and so many, many privileges that they're really not aware of until they begin to lose them. And if we don't study history, I'm afraid that we will lose them. Because there are many elements that are working against the freedoms that we have, and
So you think it's important that we remember, right? I mean, you're saying it's important. I believe that if we don't remember, we're going to forget. So, I mean, as far as looking back on D-Day, I think we need to remember the sacrifices that were made.
yes, the sacrifices were made not only to the servicemen that served in the armed services, but the sacrifices that many of the people made at home. People today don't realize that we had rationing in effect, that you were rationed in terms of automobiles and automobile tires and batteries and gasoline. Right now you can go get all the gas you want. But at that time you couldn't. And food items, sugar, butter, fruits were rationed. And other parts of the world were also, and some are now, I guess. When we were in England, an apple, an orange, or banana were an extreme luxury. Some of those were only allowed one of those a week. And same way here at home.
Before I forget, on tape, tell me again, you were a sergeant.
Yes.
Give me your regiment, battalion, or company again, so I can have it on tape. Tell me again.
I was in the 430th AAA Battalion. We were a member of the 19th Corps. We were in the 1st Army. And Omar Bradley was our commanding general of the 1st Army. Our immediate commanding general of our particular division was General Timberlake. And say we were attached to the 29th Infantry Division and was in the 32nd Regiment of Combat Engineers.
Do you by chance have your old hat, old Army hat or anything?
No, I don't.
Do you have any old pictures? I asked you for a couple old pictures. Did you find anything?
Yes, I've got some pictures.
Good. Now, were you married during the war?
Yes, I was.
To Frances?
Yes.
Okay, I wonder if she could come in here. I want to ask her a couple questions. Anyways, I just, when I have the opportunity to talk to some of the wives, can you just tell me give me a home perspective of the war from home? I mean, I've asked all these guys about questions about being overseas and in battle. What was it like to be a wife of a soldier that was fighting over in Europe? I mean, tell me your thoughts that you remember. What were the hard times, the fears? So just tell me a little story about the home front.
Okay. Well, I lived with my parents. I had our oldest child was about, I can't think how many months, but anyway, we lived in California with them. And I was never able to go, when he was in the States, I never was able to go and stay with him. So then when he left, why we stayed with the folks and had our own room and all. And I was with a group of ladies that were all young and had their first child. And we had a group and we met and visited with each other. And there was you were lonesome, and any news that you heard about the war, it always frustrated you, and it was a very lonely time, very lonely. And I didn't hear from him too often because they were in the main fighting. And I knew that he was there for a purpose and that it was my obligation to hold up this end of the marriage, whatever. And it was real hard to bring up your child without their help. Of course, I had my parents that helped with it, but I did a little babysitting to help out with finances, and I met through letters from wives of the men that were with Art overseas, and we made friends with correspondence. And I felt that it was a good cause that they were fighting for. And just prayed every day that he would come home. So it was a hard time, but my parents gave me a lot of support, and my brother and I had 2 sisters, and they each helped out. I went to stay with them at different times, but the main thing was the lonesomeness, and I believe that I wasn't alone in that. So.
Were there fears of his safety? Obviously, there were. Were there friends of yours, maybe, whose husbands were killed, or were there? How did they tell the wives? You know, in the movies, you see Western Union come with a telegram, or a chaplain will come. Is that the way it happened in the war? Were you ever around any of that, or concerned about that?
Yes, there were a couple that I lived in San Luis Obispo, and there were a couple of the girls that got the telegrams, and that just made you more fearful that that it would happen to him. But I prayed a lot, and I don't know, it was the girls that their husbands did get killed were, of course, angry at first, but it was, we grew closer with each other at this time. And
were you ever with one of those women when they got a telegram, or?
No, I was not.
Do you know how that was delivered? I'm just kind of curious.
Well,
somebody dies, what do they do to notify the family?
Well, the government sent someone out. Most of the women that I was with were Army wives, and there was an Army person that came and told them. And I was not there when they did this, but they just let them know what had happened. And that was about as far as I knew about it. But it was very hard on them, very hard.
Did Art write you letters? Did you write letters back and forth? Tell me about that.
Yes, we wrote letters when he first went over. The mail was very good, but as the time went on, I didn't hear from him like for 3-4 months, and then that made me worry that something had happened. But I still have some of the letters, I think, that he had written, and they were little, small letters, just little note papers. But he was able to tell me a little bit about what he was doing. And my letters went okay, and I sent him packages with food and things in it. And of course I sent pictures of our son. And so we were able to correspond quite a bit.
Do you think it was different back then during World War II than it is today or do you think there's some similarities with war and families and, being gone?
Well, I feel that World War II was not as publicized. We didn't know then what they know now with TV and so many, the media is so much more available to what's going on. And yes, I do think there's a difference. Mm-hmm.
You think it's good to have more media, or was it better in World War II when you didn't know everything?
Well, I feel that it was better that we didn't know what was going on. I just, it's something that we have to go through, and to hear it all the time, it frustrates you, and you worry about them anyway. And to hear all this, why, I think it's really worse than when we were in the war, in World War II. If I'd known what was going on, I don't think I could have taken it as easy as I did. So I'm not sure.
When he came home from the war, did you have a celebration, and then did he talk much about the war or not?
He never talked too much about the war. We just in the last 4 or 5 years has he really said a lot, told us different things that had happened. But we celebrated, yes. We were real happy to get him home. But I can't remember that we had a party or anything, just the family got together. And but he didn't talk about it too much when he first came home. So I don't know. And we didn't ask too many questions because I think it bothered him to have us ask questions.
You consider him a hero?
Yes, I would say so. He has some things that, some papers that he had brought home that were things that he had done. They had shot down several planes and things. And yes, I would say he was a hero to have come out of the war. And I think that he was good for his crew, and I think he did well.
Well, I think that's good. I just wanted to get a little bit more of your perspective of the war, and your thoughts being here on the home front, and
Yeah.
because I hear so many of the stories from the war, but I don't hear too many from the home, and I just want to start gathering a few stories like that. So,
Well,
yeah, did you have kids at that point? You had small kids?
no, I just had the one boy. We had, he was born in March, and Arthur left in August. And he was home once to see him. And then we didn't have any children. He was gone 3 years or so. And when he came back, well, we didn't, we lived in California. And we had our middle child, both here in Grand Junction. So when he first came home, we moved to Gateway.
Oh, okay.
And he was doing some work up there. And our second child was born in '48, so he was a little ways off from 5 years between our two. But I don't know what I'd have done if I had more than one child, because it was hard to discipline and just take care of them. So.
Do you spell your first name Francis?
E.S.
Frances.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
E is the woman's name and IS is the man.
Okay, that's it.